Cool. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Smart Ad Server's next session in the Global Ad Tech Media event, elevating the conversation between programmatic buyers and sellers. We need to talk. I am super excited to have an amazing host of speakers on stage with me today. We've got Semhar Amdemichael from Media Assembly, Rachel Pierce from InterContinental Hotel Group, and Danny Reuben from BuzzFeed. So really excited to have them on, and I want to welcome them on the stage today to speak with us. Hey guys, welcome.
Hello.
Love that we all got private jets for this, so really impressed.
Jet setting the world.
Yep. So awesome. So yeah, definitely want to talk about today. You know, there's kind of been an implication and kind of a little bit of a stigma around the fact that programmatic and the rise of the machines and automation has, you know, kind of widened the gap between, you know, buyers and sellers and the relationship between, you know, brands, agencies, publishers, and the like. And so, you know, we're here to kind of quell those fears today and you know, talk about where there's truly value in building the relationships in this new, you know, automated world and how that's going to continue. So I'd love to have you guys quickly introduce yourselves, you know, where your company is, and then also would love to kind of get, just to start off with the Adtech virtual travel theme, you know, the first place that you are looking to travel when the world, you know, returns to normal. I'll start off with really wanting to go either in the US, Montana's top of my list, and then abroad, Germany is next on my list. So get some German beers, maybe Oktoberfest, we'll see. So those are my two spots. Rachel, you want to start?
Sure. Thanks for having me, and I love the travel theme. My name is Rachel Pierce. I'm with IHG Hotels and Resorts. So for those of you who aren't familiar, we're a global hotel company, a pretty large one, about 6,000 destinations, properties across the globe. I actually already have a trip planned to Belize. So I'm super excited about that. That's going to be the first time I'm going there. So that is what I am looking forward to as far as my next travel destination.
Love it. Danny, you want to go next?
Yeah, sounds great. And Andrew, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm Danny Reuben. I'm Senior Director of Programmatic Partnerships at BuzzFeed across North America. BuzzFeed's portfolio of properties reaches over 100 million users and includes BuzzFeed, BuzzFeed News, Tasty, and recently HuffPost. Really excited to be here. And when thinking about travel, well, I've also got a trip booked. I'm heading to Portugal at the end of summer for a wedding because life is opening back up. So I'm heading to Lisbon and hoping to do some surfing while out there.
Can't get better than a wedding in Portugal, that's for sure. Semhar, what about you?
Hi guys, I'm Semhar Amdemichael, Vice President of Programmatic at Media Assembly. We're an integrated marketing agency. In my role specifically, I work with advertisers to make the most of their digital media investment. And then as far as travel, this place has been on my bucket list for a while, but it would be Cape Town, South Africa. Going big.
Love it. Love it. Yep. You might as well go big, go home on the first trip in the new post-COVID world. So love it. Well, thanks for being here. Really excited to talk. So I want to start off kind of with the theme, you know, going around the theme of the topic and the title, you know, about, you know, would love to get kind of an example from, you know, from each of you about where you basically, you know, where you felt that you were on the same page and speaking the same language with a client, partner, vendor, whoever it may be, something where, you know, where things really clicked and you felt like you guys were in sync on the value that both sides were bringing. So we'd love to kind of get that. So Semhar, maybe you first, you know, you went last, go to first now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would say, you know, a lot of times when we're speaking the same language, it really revolves around, we're looking at the same numbers and the same data. I think data is more recently been a really great meeting point. So anytime we're talking about the same metrics and talking about the same results, I think that alleviates a lot of back and forth. I know oftentimes with programmatic, we can be stuck in troubleshooting and long email chains trying to resolve things. But a recent example that comes to mind is I was speaking with a partner, and when we're talking about performance, we're specifically, in this case, we were talking about conversions, and the partner was talking about spend. So we were clearly not on the same page. So anytime we can point to the same metrics and kind of speak the same language, and really use data to ground our conversations, that really goes a long way.
Yeah, I love that. There was actually a panel before that was, I think it was today, that was talking about bringing the human element to data, like the numbers and everything are there, but the ability to actually speak to them and talk about what it means for both sides of the business, so that the theme of human element when it comes to data and analytics, and you can look at those all day, but what does it really mean for your business, or for where it provides value and where you can take that further. Danny, go ahead. What about you?
Yeah, from my perspective, one of the most important items on the list of things where you really need to be speaking the same language when setting up a campaign or putting together a strategy is how you're measuring success. What do KPIs mean? What's the goal of a campaign? And really getting on the same page there is going to be crucial to delivering a successful campaign and all parties having a good experience. So just one recent example, and this is fairly high level, but in working with the partner, it was very clear that number one KPIs were viewability and unique reach. And that then allows us on our end to set up a campaign to, really deliver the optimal experience for both of those KPIs. I think a lot can get lost because there's programmatic campaigns move fast. There's so many things to do when setting up campaigns and delivering them, but keeping your eye on really how you're at the end of the day going to walk away feeling successful or not is really crucial.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. Rachel, what about you from the brand side?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to maybe talk more about the planning process. And I think, for brands and advertisers, it's really up to them to be really clear about what they're trying to plan against. Because when you're, dealing with vendors and publishers, they're working across verticals, or working with so many people with different priorities, that it's really up to us to be crystal clear about what our needs are. An example of that is kind of going to what Danny was saying about, the planning process and what's important. And so our planning process, we've actually kind of simplified it, that we have, a target audience, and we want to reach them at an optimal frequency, at an optimal share of voice. So sometimes that changes the planning process. Instead of saying, here's how much money I have, what does a plan look like? It's saying, what is the opportunity? How large is this audience? What is the scale of it? And so that a planner can back into that. And that's a little bit different than a typical RFP planning process. Here's how much money I have, what's the most efficient CPM, and build into that. So, but I do think that that's up for advertisers to be prescriptive about it, to have templates in place so that we are talking the same language to help even early on in the planning process.
Yeah, I think that's, planning has become such a crucial aspect now, especially with the way things can be done, not just the automation that's coming around it, but also just being able to kind of get into the nitty-gritty details of where exactly can I find the most value with XYZ number of partners, and then bringing that back to the client and show them concretely where that performance is going to be and how you're going to achieve those goals. So totally agree there. Also wanted to make a note, I forgot to make a note here, but we have a Q&A option at the bottom. So any of our listeners here, the millions of people worldwide tuning in, if you guys have any questions you want to ask the panelists and speakers here, feel free to type that down below, and we'd love to get to that. So going back to the theme of automation, I would love to kind of hear from each of you on kind of where programmatic and automation has, made the conversations and made things easier in a lot of ways, whether it's conversation, workflow processes, and then where maybe it's made it more difficult, when it comes to programmatic and automation not being as smooth as everyone seems to think it would be with, automating things and making things, more efficient. So Danny, we'll go with you.
Great. Yeah, I think, it's without a doubt, automation has changed the game of how media is bought and sold. It's clearly a lot more efficient on everyone's side to transact programmatically. But at the end of the day, even though we've reduced friction, we've reduced the needs for legal and billing, and all of these things have been simplified. It's quite important that the human element is still in play. Over half of the PMP deals that we set up need some sort of troubleshooting and handholding, and that requires communication. It requires a buyer and a seller to exchange emails, to figure out what's going on, to get on the phone if needed. And so, that's one use case. But I think when you take the programmatic partnership a step further beyond just PMP's buying and selling of impressions, automation can really, really tie together meaningful partnerships between publishers and advertisers. And we're doing that in a huge way at BuzzFeed, where some of our biggest, most strategic partners are our programmatic partners. And what does that mean? We're thinking about some of the other human elements that we can bring to life for an advertiser, even though that partnership is anchored in a programmatic investment, whether it be PMPs or PG deals. How can we connect the dots with other things that can't necessarily be transacted through programmatic? So whether it's branded content or other things like that, I think that's where the world is going. So yes, it's efficient, it's clean, does require some troubleshooting, but what I'm most excited about is how a more human element can come into the fold and really help expand and accelerate how these programmatic partnerships, what they mean and what they can be.
Yeah, Semhar, I'd love to hear that from the agency side of the processes and workflow, and what's been made easier, what still kind of takes a lot of time out of your day that you almost wish maybe automation would kind of clean up for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I completely agree with some of the points that Danny made. I think automation has really helped us kind of distill down and be a lot more intentional about the partners that we work with and the types of opportunities that we test, just because we have, again, data to validate what we're doing, and just an opportunity to just really cut down to the kind of brass tacks of what we're trying to solve for. So automation obviously really enables that and makes it so much easier to understand what's performing well, where there's an opportunity to test, and how you can get closer to some of those desired audiences and desired experiences. I think where there's still challenges is when it comes to continuing to understand the value add of different partners. So I think there's no doubt that there's a ton of technology. I think actually this time last year, AI was the buzzword and kind of the new kid on the block. But it's what does that mean and how does that impact my business? So I think it's also just making sure that the language and the products and services that are offered keep at pace with people's understanding of the marketplace. Because sometimes, certain partners are so advanced, or certain solutions and ideas are so advanced, it can be challenging to relate that back to your business.
Yeah, Actually, I want to touch on that further, and Rachel, coming from the brand side, when it comes to programmatic and all the different complexities of the landscape, whether it was header bidding and now obviously identity and cookieless and the world without cookies, where are you finding that publishers, ad tech partners, are helping or can help simplify the language around that and make it easier to understand where you can find value, whether it's access to supply or anything like that. And then obviously vice versa for Danny and Semhar, like where are you, Danny, where are you looking to do that? Like from the publisher side, where are you trying to make things more simple for your clients and understanding those things of like how to access BuzzFeed inventory and then Semhar, how are you working both with tech and publisher partners, and then how are you working with your brand clients around that? So Rachel, for you to start would be great.
Okay, so I think what I heard you saying, like, how are vendors helping us simplify a very complex landscape? Is that
yes.
fair? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's
or
complex.
They're not. Say they're not.
Yeah, I mean, it's complex. I don't know if there's any one vendor that can really simplify what's going on. I mean, it is what it is, and I think we're all going through this journey together of what is this next new normal going to look like with the deprecation of cookies and the changes to privacy. So I think everybody is doing the best that they can and trying to present the solutions that they have. But the truth of the matter is it's all over the place. And so from a brand side, to be brutally honest, we're just kind of going to see what happens and kind of ride that and figure out where the tides are going to go. I think at a high level, we have to know the chunks of what are important. We know that our data is going to be important. We know that contextual advertising is going to be important. We know that publishers have a new role, that they have their own data, and that data is going to become more important. And so there's things that we're trying to keep an eye on, and those, the conversations we're having that, publishers like really have a grasp on their own data and how that can benefit you is will pique our interest and say, okay, that's kind of something we need to know. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say on that.
And I can jump in. So I think the question for me was, what is a publisher's role in this new world where, to your point, Rachel, there's no clear path forward. Like there's so many different options and opportunities of where this ecosystem is going to move with the cookieless future and such. But from the publisher perspective, it's really crucial that we stay abreast of all of the nuances and changes and solutions, and we're constantly evaluating what could work. We're also doubling down on what we know will work, which, to your point, was contextual advertising and our own data. We recently rolled out our first-party data studio, Lighthouse, this year. It's sort of our response and answer to the cookieless future, and I think those things are table stakes. And then, answering questions like SPO and what are the other boxes we can help check for buyers to make the sale and the buying process more seamless. I think that's really just having a thorough understanding of your tech stack, keeping, as many publishers trying new ad tech partners, optimizing your tech stack, and bringing recommendations, based on your experience to marketers. Saying, for us, we're platform agnostic at BuzzFeed, but we do like capabilities. So if we know that there are certain capabilities or advantages of working with a certain ad tech partner, we're going to recommend those, because at the end we want the highest impact, the most value to be transacted on. But yeah, getting back to this cookieless future, I think we're going to experience a turbulent, fun time. But we'll all figure it out together. And I think that's why, at the end of the day, the more active communication between publishers, agencies, and brands is so important as we, pave the way forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, from my perspective, working with marketers and really helping them navigate a lot of the different changes and just the industry at large, the way that we simplify is by, having a perspective internally. On the agency side, we work so cross-functionally and really lean on different subject matter experts to form a perspective on industry changes or partnerships. And I think that helps us to really, simplify what's happening, but also share that perspective with the different marketers that we work with. And then as they're developing their own kind of solutions and needs, it's really understanding what they're trying to solve for. Because I think every marketer has different audiences, different challenges, different business realities. And so for us, it's really getting to the core of what that is and how we can help with that. And then as it relates to partners, DSPs are obviously like a huge enabler from an automation perspective. And so we rely on them a lot to help us understand, the changes in the space, future proofing, and really the tech side of the house. But we also, continue to lean in on publishers and other third parties to expand that perspective, because I think depending on, where in the Lumascape you sit, you're going to have a very different solution and perspective. So I think it's about kind of taking a broad stroke, but also honing in on those key partners that are key enablers as well.
Yeah, I think, it seems like as more buzzwords come into effect or more fads like cookie deprecation and things come into play, the programmatic knowledge centers at agencies and holding companies, and then obviously in-house at the brands that have to understand all these things, become more and more leaned upon, because, for the people that aren't in this world, they need to understand or want to understand how it affects their business, how it affects their workflow, how it affects the structure of their organizations going forward when it comes to where do we need to bring more talent or bring more people on to cover these types of things, or where do we need to change our current structure to adapt to things like a cookieless world, or how do we focus on identity and things like that. So I think programmatic and automation is needed more than ever now, because it's going to help figure out these challenges, but it's also bringing about what you guys are saying is like the cookieless thing, and we're all figuring it out together. And I think it's bringing that collaboration that we haven't seen before from competitors, from partners, from different sides of the industry. So I think it's really interesting that the more challenges come up in the industry, the more we're all working together versus figuring it out on our own, because it only benefits everyone in the funnel at the end of the day. Cool. So we had a question from the audience that I'll bring up. So it's great to have all sides of the automation funnel. Do you think PG and curated deals are a good way to bring in the human element to this funnel? So anybody who wants to chime in on that, the opportunity for programmatic guaranteed, curated deals, PMPs, how is that bringing a human element more to the automated world?
Yeah, I can jump in on this. Yeah, I think as we're starting to accelerate usage of PGs and some of those curated deals, it necessarily requires us to work directly with the publisher. And it's been great because it allows us to really customize a solution that's geared toward not only our goals, but the audiences that we're trying to reach. So some of those experiences have been a really great opportunity to collaborate. But also to flex, like, there may be creative services that a publisher has, there may be brand studies or other offerings that they can bring to the table that I don't think you really get perspective on if you're just, transacting, on an open exchange capacity. And then conversely, from the marketer side, there may be like a whole suite of assets that they have that they want to use, or other things that they're trying to solve for. So I think, in my experience, it's been a really meaningful way to get the best out of kind of both sides.
I totally agree with Semhar. I think while there is an investment in human time and human capital needed for PMPs and PGs, the output is, I mean, exponential, and there's so much more value that a marketer can get through, you know, these types of deals. You know, when it comes to curated targeting or creative services, measurement framework, we're layering in all kinds of added value to PMP and PG partnerships that hit certain spend levels. So I think, you know, that's just the start, but there's data services. There's so many things that we can offer to PMP and PG partners that, yeah, it requires some time and some effort, but the output, again, is exponential. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, and I can just round it out that, you know, for somebody who's been in digital planning for a long time, it just feels full circle. This is before programmatic. This is how we work together. We work directly with publishers. We negotiated deals, and we understood the audience. We understood, well, there wasn't quite as much data, but I love how PG PM deals has kind of come first full circle. So those skill sets of negotiation and, you know, vendor management comes back into play. And I love seeing that. And I definitely think that there's a value to both sides when you can build those connections back up.
Yeah, great points. So I think one of the funny things, you know, one of the key things that kind of always kicks off the relationship between buyers and sellers, you know, is the RFP process. And so, you know, in terms of automation and programmatic, where do you all think, you know, the RFP process can evolve, especially now with things like cookieless and identity and contextual targeting and those types of things? Like, where are you maybe changing, you know, from Semhar and Rachel, where are you changing, you know, how you're approaching RFPs, how you're RFPing partners, whether they be publishers, whether they be tech partners, you know, how are you changing that approach to get the most value out of, you know, those conversations from that side? And then Danny, on your side, how are you changing the approach of how you respond to RFPs when it comes to bringing more value out of your supply and not just from the, you know, programmatic side, but creative content, brand messaging, you know, all of that. So anyone who wants to chime in first, but, you know, I think that's really interesting, you know, how the RFP kind of kickstarts the conversation and relationship between buyers and sellers.
Yeah, I would say this is one area where we're on the agency side, at least, just trying to be more intentional. So from an RFP perspective, definitely looking to do more legwork before even an RFPs are sent out, just because we want to achieve so many different things. And I think it's really about understanding the partner roster even before we go down the RFP path. So looking at metrics and data that we have on performance by partner to date to really help us inform who we ultimately RFP and what we're looking to get back from them. I think that feedback loop is so important once you RFP, but the legwork ahead of time, I think, saves you so much time and back and forth down the line. So being intentional from the outset, once you've RFP'd, I think it's really important to, you know, like I said, have that feedback loop and have the opportunity to share feedback in real time on, you know, what we're looking for, where we need tweaks. And I think having an understanding that, like, flexibility is really going to be the name of the game. You know, rate cards, that I feel like that's almost a relic of a prior period. So being flexible where we can be and really having that feedback loop to finesse a plan that everyone's excited about and feels good about has been our approach.
Yeah, I think it's become so much less about throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks, because now, and we kind of talked about this offline, but, you know, programmatic has brought, you know, the ability to understand performance and knowing what publishers work for you off the bat now, because you have that data, you've ran test campaigns and you've done all that. So now your RFP, you know, process can be more about how do we do more? How can we do unique things like branded content or unique creatives or first part, obviously what does it mean when first party data comes into the mix and things like that. So, you know, I agree that it's become much more strategic, and instead of RFPing 500 publishers, you can now RFP 50 because you know that those 50 have provided value in the past at a higher level.
Yeah,
I was waiting to see if anybody else wanted to chime in there.
I can chime in. I think, the RFP process is really important if a publisher is going to put their best foot forward. Having enough time to think about what opportunities would make sense for a given campaign is important. We know time isn't always there. So it's funny when I think about the proposal decks that I used to make years ago and, how much time you'd spend on these big things. Like, I think that's somewhat, it's important and has its place, but sometimes you just need to understand what audience makes sense for a campaign. And if that can be layered into a video PMP and because we're starting tomorrow, so time is really important. And I think it's both on the buy side to do some pre-work and due diligence on their partner list, as Semhar kind of very eloquently outlined, but also really important for the publisher and the sell side to ensure that they are proactively reaching out with important updates, whether it be research or inventory or ad formats that are new and exciting and relevant to the business of the buyer marketer. So I think the RFP process is certainly changed. It's very important. It allows us to put our best foot forward as far as what added value we can think about, what data services, creative opportunities, but the pre-work is also, I would say, equally, if not more important, because that's all about relevance and making sure we're in that consideration set. And I know we'll probably talk more about this, but that is even more important in this sort of COVID/post-COVID world, where the touch points we're having are far less. And when we do have them, we need to be efficient. And really, that's about respect and getting things put together quickly. So those are my 2 cents, but I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is I mean, quite honestly, our RFP process has really dwindled a lot. I wouldn't say we have heavy RFP processes anymore. But what is important when we are working with vendors, publishers, is helping us with the forecasting process and really understanding how data plays a role, what data will work. And I think it gets complex because I think data works differently for everybody. And so having a thoughtful conversation around what data the advertiser brand knows works for them and how that applies to their inventory, to their landscape, and having thoughtful conversations about, quite honestly, a data strategy and how that applies and how to help us forecast how to ultimately put together plans. So that's kind of what the RFP process to us looks like right now, is that help with forecasting and data strategy.
Do you think, do any of you think the RFP process will ever fully automate itself? Do you think it'll ever go pure digital? Or are we still going to have the fax IO, telegraph, Pony Express world of the RFP IO process?
I think it depends. I mean, I think there's always going to be an RFP process for things that are more larger, customizable, sponsorship driven. So I think there's always going to continue to be some kind of a role for the RFP process.
I agree. I think there will always be a role, and there will be probably different forms of the RFP process. But a lot of the work we do with PMP and PG deals, they're very campaign specific opportunities, and each campaign is different, has a different set of KPIs, has a different goal. And putting together an optimal strategy for a campaign is really going to depend on us on knowing the core of what the campaign is for. So as I think, an RFP process could be simple or it could be complex, but it's quite important. And it's really one of the most important forms of communication we have right now.
Yeah, no, great points. So sales, sales is such a big aspect of the relationship building process in terms of, how do you reach out to clients? How do you gain their trust, build relationships, provide value, from the start? And obviously in the world of COVID, things have changed from post-COVID, type of sales and building relationships to during COVID and the, kind of the aspects of how reaching out to clients and the virtual world and Zoom calls and everything. And then obviously we have the post-COVID world and where things, might go. So I would love to kind of hear, how you've seen that shift in the sales relationship between, your clients and your vendors in terms of that, and maybe where you see that world turning into post-COVID, in terms of how you maybe from Danny's perspective, obviously how you entertain clients, how you provide value, how do you, get in the door, both in the, maybe, would love to hear it from the COVID times and how you were adjusting there. And then obviously post-COVID. And then for you guys, where are you finding, I'm sorry, you guys, Rachel and Semhar, where are you finding value in that, where are you not having your time wasted, where you think that's going to, that kind of sales relationship, for the publisher tech vendors out there who are trying to get in the door and work with you guys, where are you finding that value? Where did you find it during COVID? And then maybe where are you going to find it in a post-COVID world? I think the 3 martini lunches are out the window maybe, but maybe there's more unique things to do now in a post-COVID world, although we'll always have a martini still. That's never going away.
Well, I don't mind starting just because I think I have a interesting perspective being in travel in a pandemic where the bottom just fell out from underneath us. And I just have to say that like our strategic partners during that time were just really amazing. They were really sympathetic. They were, just kind of bend over backwards, like understanding that we were just living in a time that none of us have ever experienced. And that, those partnerships really meant a lot during that time because it was just really difficult to not know, what was going to happen with travel when everything fell out underneath you. So I think that vendors were, I'm sure they're working with other partners that didn't have the bottom fall out, but that sympathy and partnership really went a long way for us during the pandemic. And I'm happy to say, we are getting into recovery and we're getting, out of this post-pandemic. And I think it's, I'm not good at predicting futures, but I think it's going to obviously be really interesting because we're not going back to the workplace like we did. We're going to have these hybrid work conditions. I mean, we've cleared out our desks. We're not going to have desks anymore within IHG. So what does that mean about entertaining and engaging and having these relationships with vendors? I know right now, I think there's probably everybody's excited to connect again. And we've had a couple people like, hey, do you want to have lunch? And we're all like, yes, because we're just craving to, connect with people again. But that's probably going to wear off, and it's going to be difficult to manage that time when the workplace environment looks so different. So I would love to hear everybody else's like prediction on what that is going to look like in the future, because I think right now is exciting and we're like, let's all connect and let's see each other, but I don't know how long that's going to last.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, especially during COVID, I think we were just trying to be much more focused on efficiency. And so those partners that could kind of meet us at that speed and, be really mindful of time, of our time. I think that was extremely helpful. I think during COVID as well, you saw a lot of advertisers really shifting their planning strategies and trying to be nimble given the market reality. And so I think, partners that understood that and were willing to kind of work with us, but also help us as we're doing like scenario planning and shifting things here and updating things there. I think that is really appreciated because we're, trying to act nimbly and need, our partners to kind of follow suit. And then as far as predictions for, the brave new world post-COVID, I think it remains to be seen because I think, some of the basics of good, I think partnership will still remain. So being mindful of, your time and getting down to the brass tacks of your KPIs and those things I think will remain. I think the delivery and the mechanism by which we communicate may kind of evolve. But, you know, I think for me, the best relationships, whether it's remote or in person, are ones that are conversational, where, you know, I'm not just sitting there for 45 minutes kind of listening to you, you know, give your, you know, overview on your tech stack or your you know, your solution, but ones where we're having meaningful conversation about what I'm trying to solve for, where your solution may be a fit, and where you see the future kind of going. And I think that will remain to be the case.
Well, I'm certainly game for 3 martini lunch if anyone else is right now, but no, I think both, you know, Semhar and Rachel, you made really great points. I think COVID, you know, was a whirlwind for everyone. It was so challenging. From the publisher side, our number one really mantra was flexibility. How can we be good partners at this time, whether it be, you know, providing insights on what we're seeing based on user behavior across our site that might inform some strat planning, whether it be sending a Uber Eats gift card just because we know it's tough times. You know, how can we be flexible, good partners? Also, knowing that planning cycles have changed, they've shortened. Now they're about 2 weeks on average, if that. And so what does that mean? You know, how can we continue to be relevant? And so the forum for how our touch points are, we like to call it like a 20-minute, you know, Zoom meeting or Hangouts meeting or whatever it is. Like that is what we strive to do, just to be respectful, have a, you know, very concise conversation about the business. And I think the conversation about, hey, how have you been? What are you watching? Where are you, like, when COVID opens up, where are you traveling? How's your dog? Like those kind of niceties are still going to be important for our business, but they might have to happen, you know, at a dinner or at, you know, a round of golf, or whether it's a lunch or whatever it is. I still think that's going to be important because there is so much human element in what we do, and relationships do matter. Where is this all going to go? I mean, Rachel made some great points about where, you know, going back to work and the meetings in the workplace, and things are going to be different. But what I see coming out of it are the concise 20-minute meetings, conversations about business, and you know, potentially some larger events, some, you know, quarterly dinners or whatever it may be. So kind of the best of both worlds. But I don't have a crystal ball either, so we'll just all see.
Yeah, I'm all for the experiential, you know, relationships. I think, you know, especially with COVID and the way things have been, being indoors and working from home, I think, you know, relationships can be built, you know, in a more unique and fun way, whether it's baseball games, you know, vineyard brewery trips, like things like that, like experiences that we missed out on so much versus, you know, the standard happy hour or you know, lunch and learn and things like that. For sure, I think experiences are more important now because you never know the next time you're never going to get to do those things. So I definitely think COVID has really changed the relationship between buyers and sellers, where you're not seeing people as a line item or an IO anymore. And it's really, you know, you're bringing, like we've kind of said it over and over, the human element is coming back into play a lot more now. So we have 1 minute left. So, you know, I think we can really just wrap it up there, but, you know, I appreciate everyone's time. This has been an amazing panel, amazing group of speakers, and love the content. So thank you guys so much for joining. And I'm hoping we can all do this in person sometime soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.